Hello, welcome to, to one more session of Code Night New Zealand. I was gonna say like kia ora, but I forgot to say that. But welcome. Yeah, I think we're having like a pretty good sessions this year, and this is one more that we're gonna be just approaching, and hope you like it. We're gonna be doing some unveiling of OpenTelemetry on app insights. uh, we're going to be exploring some good content. It's more around like intermediate to advanced. I would say that it's not like basic because I think like most of the examples that you find on Microsoft Docs or any other place, even like the open telemetry, you find like they're really basic. So I decided to bring like something a little bit more complex just to demonstrate how you can leverage the tooling to do like open telemetry for us, right? So I think I just want to keep you excited because definitely it is. We're going to explore like containers, messages. We're going to see like how App Insights deal with that. We're going to explore also .NET Aspire, how like this new tooling is being made available to us, right? So there's really good content in here like that you're gonna learn. If you're like coming with like no background at all, I'm gonna present like some sort of context so you know like where things fit, right? So just for you to get started, I'm gonna provide also the code and we're gonna do hands-on, right? So my intent is that for you to understand the core pieces and how you can get started, right? And with no further ado, I'm just kind of continue with like the slide section. I'd like just to introduce myself. For those that don't know me, I'm the host of Le Code Night New Zealand, Marcel Medina. I'm a software developer and Azure specialist. I'm also like a Microsoft MVP within the Azure category. I currently work like a Datacom as a practice lead. Those are my details with the QR code that leads to my blog, tech.playgokids.com. And I also would like to mention that we're a community group of developers. We love coding. We follow best practices on software development languages and technologies. In general, like the content that we present is more focused on Microsoft technologies, but we are open to all stacks, really. And the intent of the user group is to enable developers with practical knowledge to excel and launch their careers. You're always going to find like good content. Like if you're a junior dev coming in, you're going to get like to learn how to get started and to a level that you're going to find like your way going forward. And if even if you are like a lead dev, for example, you're going to find perhaps I'm very sure like things that you're not aware of, you're going to learn as well. It's also a part of azuretar.com, which is a cloud native user group where we get to talk about the latest and greatest on the cloud native space. We also sponsored by dotnetfoundation.org, which is an open source entity. Well, it's an entity that looks after open source projects, .NET projects, right? And let me share my screen here and bring my other slides. These ones in here are not my screen. Let me see, would be this one. All right, okay, I'm just gonna continue. We're gonna have like some agenda where we're gonna glance all like the concepts around the open telemetry. We're gonna explore a little bit like .NET observability, what's available for us to explore. And well, we're going to do hands-on demos. I think like the radio in here is that we have 10% of content and 90% of coding, but it's important just to bring like some sort of concepts for people that are learning. And even if you are not familiar with the topic, you get used to it. So that shouldn't take long. Okay, with the open telemetry, right? Um, what's open telemetry? So as you can see here, like it's a platform agnostic observability and telemetry platform, right? The intent is that you have like the whole setup of like your observability, and they have like some pillars that define like what they I would say provide, right? What they intend to do. It's technology agnostic, right? So it says in here like that's supported by all major APM vendors. Those are the application performance management vendors, like for example, Datadog. They're like Honeycomb. There's like application sites, right? So it's vendor agnostic. It's open source by the CNCF, right? Cloud Native Computing Foundation. You have like some pillars in there. We have logs, metrics, and tracing. We're gonna kind of explore those three. Those are key to understand. And, application sites provide you with those pillars, right? You have like you have other platforms that do similar things. Platforms that have limitations. Maybe they only target tracings, only target metrics. App Insights, you're going to find all of them. So as you can see, it defines like APIs for how your applications can write telemetry. Cool. And how the telemetry can be exported to those APM systems. So you have like ways of combining, creating your telemetry and pushing to, well, those vendors, right? And if you're not pushing like to vendors, you can even have like your own local just to see like what's going on. And we have tooling for that. There are like some semantic conventions for schemas of the telemetry. So depending on what you're doing, like HTTP requests, you're doing message-based, or depending on what you're doing, there are some conventions around attributes. Let's say attributes define like some sort of schema. And they also, they leverage this OpenTelemetry wire protocol. All right, so we're gonna get to see how that works. Let me just go to the next slide. Within the dotnet, right? Let's consider here like an F process. In looking at the OpenTelemetry, what's available on dotnet? Right, so you have like some pillars with like iLogger for logs, log records. You have meter on .NET, so where you can have metrics. You have activities where it leads you to tracings, right? So there's like just like a existing classes, right, available on the .NET that matches those core pillars of OpenTelemetry. And with the OpenTelemetry, there are like SDKs, basically NuGet packages that provides you with that sort of the core for of the engine, right? Let's say that allows you to hook those logs, metrics, or tracings. There are also instrumentation libraries, and those instrumentation libraries, they kind of uh, have like some, let's say, features, right? But what they mainly do, they wrap functionalities around. It could be around the logs, around tracings, metrics, the kind of the abstract the implementation, right? So you could just hook. It's auto instrumented. So with few lines of code, you could get something to work, right? So in so you're gonna see there are like basic stuff you can do it and advanced stuff that you can do it. And then where we're seeing here like exporters. So you have like inputs from those pillars, but you need to output that for monitoring, right? And we call like those as exporters. There's one specific for Azure Monitor Exporter. There's like OpenTelemetry Exporter, which is a generic one. And well, there are multiple implementations of that. That's the generic one. There are Zipkin Exporter, Prometheus. Uh, yeah, in general, like if you don't have a specific implementation, most of the exporters are going to be, or the tooling are going to rely on the OpenTelemetry exporter, right? But there are like specific ones. And then, well, what we have in here, like for those tooling, right? Let's say tooling, application sites where the exporter basically pushes like the messages to it. There's also like this OpenTelemetry collector, which kind of makes the telemetry available for any other, let's say consumers, right? Because this collector basically captures everything and make it available for whoever wants to pull, right, the information from it. There's like a specific tooling like Jaeger for like tracing, Aspire with like the latest dotnet, and that's now we're going to explore. That's it's still preview, but it's very promising, right? And I'll tell why. I'll show why. Jaeger, Aspire, that kind of consumes from the OpenTelemetry exporter. Zipkin, that uses like the Zipkin exporter. Prometheus, they use like a different sort of way of, it's not like a push that works like with the OpenTelemetry exporter, but it uses like more like a pull, right? Uh, yeah, that's like what we have in here, just to give like a little bit of context. We're going to explore the OpenTelemetry SDK and see how those pillars can be coded, right? And then we're going to have some exporters. The main one we're going to see it is the application sites, but I'm going to show a little bit of the Jaeger and Aspire, just to give like just a glance of what they can do. And on this example, we're going to explore something that's not that basic, but we start like with a web API. And for this API, we're going to be pushing a message to a queue. And once you like, so that's it. Like that's the first part. So we have a web API that pushes a message to a queue. But then we're going to have a worker service. In this worker service, what's going to be doing is going to be listening to that particular queue and receiving the message. And once it receives the message, it saves to a database. This is kind of a typical scenario, microservices scenario, where you basically have like messaging, right, happening. And that's one particular flow, but there could be multiple flows, right, on your solution. But this one is not trivial. It's just like a little bit more complex, because for the telemetry, right, we want to capture, like we want to know since at the beginning what happened from the web API until the database, what happens in between. And for that to happen, we need propagators, right? I'm going to show on code what that means. But basically, we need to grab that information that was initially captured and pass to the other application. How is that going to be done, right? Because the worker doesn't talk to the web API. There's a glue in there. If you hang around, I'm going to show like on the code. And well, with no further ado, I'm gonna just jump to the code so you can see like what the solution is. Let me bring this other screen. Uh, well, it's still showing. Sorry, let me just, I was sharing like a window. I want to share my screen. Just a minute. Let me present that. All right, should be this one. Cool. All right, so this is a repo I created. It's still not published. I'm gonna publish as soon as we finish the session, but I'm gonna share the URL, so you guys are gonna have access to. What you can see here, like you can see Docker, right? Uh, and within the Docker, we have Docker Compose. So we have containers. We're gonna be running containers locally, uh, and you can see some services, right? So we have like Jaeger, Aspire, RabbitMQ. So that's like our broker message broker, right? We're dealing with SQL Server and some tools, SQL tools to do some magic. Actually, I'm gonna show like what that is. Uh, so for Jaeger, right? So we're just making, well, leveraging this container with these parts that are required to be available. For Aspire, we also have like this Aspire dashboards. I'm saying like the latest because still preview, but like there are like some parts required for that as well. RabbitMQ, that's the standard container image that contains like the UI as well. So those are port numbers required. SQL Server, so you can see that's also a container leveraging like the 2019 version. There's like password in here. They're just standard, but the port is 1433. You have some tools. What they do? Basically, you can see here that we have a volume that takes a SQL. There's an initializer. And what it does is that, well, you can see that on initializer itself that takes the tools in here, right? Basically, it's a command. It provides for me to run a command that's gonna take a SQL script. And what this SQL script does is that, okay, I'm creating a database, having this, well, referencing the database created, creating a table called person, contains ID, name, age, address, email, date, and a primary key as an ID, and an envelope. The envelope has an ID, a person ID, which is a foreign key for the person, right? So it references this. We have a correlation ID, a key name, producer, consumer, kernel, framework, date, right, in a primary key. I put like this as an envelope because in general, if you have like auditing, you're gonna have end up with something like that. I'm not saying you're gonna do like on a table, but just to what we were more interested about is to see like some sort of the the path, right? Or if the information that's coming from the request is going through and come to the SQL. Right, so we're just grabbing this envelope that contains the correlation ID that goes all the way. Uh, this is just to start, right? What I'm gonna do in here, I'm gonna just, well, you can see that I'm just like bring the compose up, right, which is detached, right? So that's why I have the D. That's started, right? So what it does right now, if I look at my SQL in here, well, this one was before. I'm gonna disconnect, connect again. So we did it. It automatically created for me the database, right? And also the tables. Cool. You can see the table is here, right? So I have the tables, things are there. Cool. I think like we're good to go. Now that's just the introduction, right? So you know that we have containers. If you're not familiar with containers, well, you need to have like the Docker desktop in your machine. And you can just, as soon as you have Docker desktop, you just run that command, Docker compose up -d, and you should be able to get like your environments up and running. I'm gonna show the solution, right? So I show like the Docker. The solution, I'm not gonna show like on Visual Studio Codes. I'm gonna jump into Visual Studio in here, right? So we have like the solution in there, like API and the worker. And let's see like what we have in the API, right? I'm gonna show the program, CS. Let me zoom in a little bit. Hopefully that's okay. I think that's a little bit better. And well, that's a standard web API. So if you create like just like the vanilla web API, you're gonna get like some, well, the service collection and the sort of builder. But on top of that, I have added like a controller. We have, this is kind of out of the box, but we have like the sender. We're gonna show what it does. And we're gonna do like some OpenTelemetry. We're gonna code this one. I'm gonna come back to this just in a few minutes. So, but we have this message sender. Nothing here, it's different or uh, one thing like I want to show, right? So the controller, let's see here. That's the person controller. And what it does is just, okay, it has like only a single method, right? That does, it just receives like HTTP post, it receives a person. So I'm gonna have like a swagger that is gonna interface that for me. So I'm gonna provide like this payload. As soon as it comes in, I put like a breakpoint in here. We're gonna create like this correlation ID, right? And the intent is that for this correlation ID to go to the SQL table that we had in there, that's going to contain the correlation ID. But you can see here that for logs, right? What's interesting is that what's the difference, right, between logs and traces in metrics, right? So let's go like with the easy one. So metrics allow you to have some sort of indicator or counters or something that you want to measure that has been executed, and you know that by incrementing or having some sort of um, a flag or something there, you know that it happened or it hasn't happened, right? So you can have like in applications, you could have counters, things like that. Or you can have even like a measure of like environment performance, right? So there's like this ability for you to do it as well. But you can see that we're just trying to measure the performance or the a specific metric at that moment in time. With let's say the traces, right? As you can see here, we have this activity source, and we're starting an activity. We're telling, okay, I'm gonna start like tracing with like this, just a stamp of personal info. It looks, well, it's not like a log in itself, because like if you're using loggers, as you can see here, well, you're just stamping like a message, a functional behavior of your application, right? So if you loggers, you have like basically it's a record of a stamp of what's happening. And you could look at that as more like how from the functional aspects of your solution, you could kind of think about that, because at the same time you can stamp like very technical things. You could just say like describe what's happening, right? And you could have like, oh, then it follows standard like information. You could have warnings, errors, or even critical errors, right? So you have like a range of levels, right, for that. While the traces are a little bit different, they're just you're simply stamping what's happening, right, at that particular moment. And what's interesting about traces is that you can measure performance on how your application is doing from one end to the other. So you can compare like when like things have started and where they are at. If things are taking too much time, if like there are any particular values, right? We say like those traces, those tags, if they are meaningful for you to know that things are going through that flow that you have it, right? They are a little bit different than like logs, but they set up like this path where you can see like the whole like path of like the flow of the message, right? So it's to be honest, like traces are can be sampled. They don't need to happen every single time. Loggers with logs, you have that happening every single time. With tracings, nope. You can decide that, well, maybe only 50% is enough for you just to capture that. So you can have some sampling on that. That's the main intent, right? Uh, when we're looking here, like coming back to this application, so we're creating like this envelope, and this envelope takes who? Takes the person. So exactly this object that's coming here, we're just wrapping them onto an envelope. We're going to have like some sort of the kernel. What's this? Like the OS, which in my case is Windows. The framework as well. Like what's the version? It's .NET version 8. So we're going to have like some stamping of the information. Then, okay, here like we're registering the person, and then we have the send message. Let's go in here and see what's it that's doing it. And that's where the magic happens, really. You can see that we have a queue, and we're pushing this, well, serialize this body that's coming like from the message that we're sending across. Well, the message itself is a T type, right? So that's based on my envelope that I'm pushing here, right? So my envelope is the one that's coming in here, which is the T, right? Which is the message in here. Yeah, here I have like, okay, I'm saying that this is another activity. So I could have like tracings under tracings, and I can nest them. So I can measure like specifics of my code. So I had started on the API a trace, right? It was like uh, this activity source, which is the default one. But then it came down, oh, sorry, in here, and I start another one, another more specific, right? And this is the queue send. I'm specifying this as the producer because that's the producer. And here it's more like specific to Rabbit MQ. Not sure if you're familiar with this broker, but I basically created like the connection, created the channel. And what's interesting here is the context to inject, right? So I'm just setting up the the well those tags, grabbing all of them, making it available, right? For just grabbing this context, I'm gonna push them and propagate them to the other side. So it's just creating like the context to inject. And in here you can see this, right? Propagator inject. Uh, and you have this context that takes what I had on my context, right? So because that's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have an activity, so this is gonna come in here. If I don't have the activity, it would take like my current. But what's important to see in here is that it's grabbing this context and wrapping that. It also grabs like the baggage. All right, so the baggage contains all of the shared, let's say, shared tags, kind of. So everything like that happens within my activity, right? They can go like onto a baggage, right? And the baggage is kind of global to my application. In here, I don't have much going on. I don't have like the baggage. The baggage is mainly what's being created once the API was created, but I could do like baggage.set. I could have like add things on my baggage, right? So same as a baggage that you put like your clothing, you could just put stuff in there. And in here, like what's doing is just grabbing the context and the baggage. Eh, but the important thing here is the context that I have. Then I have like passing props and uh, inject trace context into basic properties. We can go down in this one, which is basically down here. So you can see that's taking props, a key, and a value. When it does that, it's basically adding a header and adding a value to the header. So far, so good, right? If you have worked before with messages, well, you can have like keys, you can have values, you can have headers, right? So what's going to happen is here is that the context is going to be pushed through the headers. So that's when it gets to the other side, the information is in there, right? So when you look in here, uh, so the propagator inject is doing that. So it's creating the, uh, injecting the headers, but also like I'm setting, well, for this activity in specific, right? I'm stamping some tags. And there are like some sort of conventions on that. So you can see that, well, why would I need to push that? Well, this is not like this is a kind of an attempt of doing like a standard on on this like it's a semantic convention, right? That if you're doing HTTP, you're kind of expected to pass some like sort of define some tags. If you're doing messaging, you could use like those, right, where you have, okay, what's the message system, where's the destination, what sort of information you find like that's important, right? There's a link I can share like later that's going to be covered, but that's part of the OpenTelemetry. So they are attempting. I would say attempting because there are many variations of that. There's a standards trying to be defined, but you can see that on these semantic conventions, kind of jumping into messaging in here. So yeah, you can explore this where you can see that there are multiple conventions for that. I'm just grabbing a slice of what we could do under the messaging. So that's why I have that, right? And then the message is being published. That's it. And then I have a logger. Uh, After that, well, in case exceptions, a log error, but I also have a status on the activity. It just tells that a trace that something went wrong, right? It's interesting to see that because I think like depending on the platform that you are, right? Maybe like Jaeger, for example, you're gonna see only does tracings. And then if you're doing only log records, uh, that's not gonna be captured on Jaeger. All right, so then like how you're gonna see that there was an error? Well, you need to flag it to the tool that there was an error. With application sites, you're gonna see that, well, you don't really need that because the tooling itself, as soon as you log an error, it's going to identify that belongs to that particular context. All right, so yeah, the Azure team like has done like pretty good job with application sites. Things like that, they are okay if you're doing like a local development. So it makes sense. I think like you just make sure that depending on the tooling you're using, stamp what you need, right? You're doing only tracings, but you're not going like to the cloud to see that. Do it like on your local, make sure it's in there. Cool. You can verify that things are working, and that's it. As soon as you hook to the cloud, you know that's gonna work in there. So far, so good. That's the first part. Okay. I'm gonna jump now like back to the OpenTelemetry, right? Because well, now we need to glue that thing together because well, by default nothing's gonna happen. So we need to hook that. I'm gonna bring like the default. You're gonna see probably you have seen that the auto instrumentation, which I would say is okay to start. But as soon as you have like more few applications, right? So you need like to stamp like define a naming convention. Maybe you want to export the logs only to a particular sort of tool. uh, yeah, you're gonna see that you're gonna find limitations, right? So I think that's the point. But to get started, if it's your first application, that's awesome. It just works, right? Add open telemetry. Okay, that's kind of like the standard way of doing that, right? But how did I get that? So like by default, you don't have this add open telemetry. If I come in here, right? So you're gonna see that we have few packages. Okay. Uh, the first one, oh, we're gonna say that we need to have extensions hosting. That's the main one. ESP.NET Core, which contains like this instrumentation. Those would be the two main ones. Then you start, okay, now you want to have exporters. Well, OpenTelemetry protocol would be the one to go to. If you're not using Jaeger, you don't need it. Well, we're demoing application sites. You need to have that one. That one is specific for web APIs in ASP.NET Core, which kind of does a lot of instrumentations for us. It does like ASP.NET Core, it does SQL instrumentation, all combined. So it's very powerful. I bring like more details because of metrics around HTTP. And I'm showing Jaeger. Jaeger nowadays, I'm just checking like there is now supported OpenTelemetry protocol. I just kept this separate, but you could easily replace that with OpenTelemetry, okay? So coming back to the code, right? So you get this with those NuGet packages. And to do that, like with the uh, App Insights, so you have like the Azure Monitor, right? So if I bring that, well, with that, that would be the auto instrumentation, right? The minimal sort of hook to get things to flow and work really. Uh, the only thing is that in here on my ends, I need to put, or let's put it in here, endpoints, because I have like this connection string, right? So let me put like the connection string to be, for that one would be the builder configuration. And then I have my app settings in here. This is something I'm gonna share, but I'm gonna remove sensitive information, contain like instrumentation keys and stuff when I commit it, right? So, but that's going to be what I need, right? So that would be something like auto instrumentation, right? That's fine. As I said, it's gonna work. Production ready. That's not enough. I say that because, as I said, when you get to App Insights, you have like multiple attributes. One of those I'm gonna show in here, and have like this tracing thing in here. It's called extensions, right? Uh, I put like here this on purpose because you, for you to differentiate like which service is what, you need to use like on App Insights the cloud, the role name and role instance. Okay, so that's why I put like a comment in here because those are very important. Because when you're doing the log analytics, right, or if visualizing there, if you want to create queries to match only a particular service, you need to have those names. You don't want the auto instrumentation to make that up. You want to have full control on that. But as you can see here, this is all made up in here. I'm just like through reflection doing rabbit, oh, just like stamping the names, instance, a version. You can completely change that, okay? That's not a standard, nothing like that. If you're gonna take this code and use it, you could hard code that. You could do the way you well you feel like it's important on your team. Uh, and yeah, so this is auto instrumentation. Well, we're not doing auto instrumentation. What we're gonna do, if you do a little bit further, you're gonna see that we're going to specify tracing. We're going to specify metrics, okay? And we need details for that. So for example, we can say, okay, within tracing, we need to define a default source. And what's the source is the default activity source. And that dictates, okay, let's say it's the parent of all traces, right? I mentioned that traces could be nested. So this would be the master one, the parent of all of them. So we have in here, we need to add a source, okay? And then for this source, I'm gonna define open telemetry. I have my extensions, right? So I just showed the extensions in there. I have, well, attributes, service name. So I'm just saying that, okay, for the parents, is going to be called like service name. Could be anything really that you find like that's useful for you. With that, okay, that's, so I'm saying that the trace, the parent is that one. Now I need to say that, okay, for that particular trace, I want to identify with a service name and a service ID. Uh, Remember, the role name and the role instance on application sites require you to provide that, Okay, so when I go in here and come, like I can set resource builder. Okay, for the resource builder, I need to have this resource um, builder dot default. What does it do? So if you look in there, like the default adds like some standard attributes. So I'm just gonna go with it. All right, so it has like this OpenTelemetry source attributes, OpenTelemetry service name. I'm just gonna stick to that. And with that, I need to add the service. Okay, add the service. All right, I'm gonna kind of split up this into different levels. And I can have what? A service name, okay, which is the same as above, OpenTelemetry extend. I'm gonna use as same as above. Uh, I think like this one is important to use like the service name. What I have as a source in here, you could do anything, really. Yeah, you could label as your preference. But in here, like the service, this is the stamping of the cloud role name in the role instance. So this is important to be the service name, right? We're going to have the service instance ID, which is also going to be the OpenTelemetry extensions dot service instance ID. And we're going to have this service version, right? You want to see like what version is that? I'm going to call it like that version. So far, so good. Okay, so we're just like connecting the telemetry tracing, right? Remember like that diagram. We have those pillars. We're connecting trace to the SDK. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna create an exporter, right? Because we want to visualize the information. Okay, so with that, we could say, okay, so I want to add uh, the OpenTelemetry exporter. And well, I could use like the exporter in here, right? Let's say exporter dot connection string, because endpoint actually. That's going to be my URL for the exporter. It's interesting here because the exporter itself is going to use gRPC. Let me just check like any questions so far. Just seeing like Sina, Karthik. Hey guys. All right. If you have questions, I'm gonna be looking not that often, but hopefully I can answer them later on. We have like some content to cover in here. Let's just carry on. We're gonna have HTTP, then we have, well, we have like the, oops, we're gonna have that. And looking at exactly as what we had in here, I'm gonna copy it. Okay, we're gonna do it this and this, but I want to use OpenTelemetry for Aspire. Uh, Aspire, as you can see, it's in here, Aspire agent host. So we have my local host agent port. Let me put it in here. Okay, Aspire agent host. I'm gonna put it Aspire, oops, agent port, if I'm not wrong. Agent port, cool, that's good. Okay, right, but that's not still not enough. Maybe I want to see a little bit more. Actually, for me in here, like would be fine. Like I have my local. My local is Aspire. With that, I can see traces, metrics, logs. Good. I just want to show Jaeger, right? So you're gonna see the limitations of like the tool as well. For Jaeger, there was a Jaeger exporter. I don't think like for the others I'm gonna do it for Jaeger, but I think at least to show the differences, right? Because they are not, well, they're different tools, have like different purposes, right? And for Jaeger itself, I'm going to use it for traces. It's good, but I feel like a little bit limited. Let's say builder dot, well, it's going to be exactly the same. Let me copy that. Okay, that's going to be Jaeger agent host. Cool. We're going to have another exporter dot agent port. Okay, and that one is going to be the port. Agent port. This accepts integer. Okay, convert to int. Okay, let's convert that. Yep, that's it. And okay, so we got like the first part, the tracing, right? Let's see working, right? Because now like we're done tracing. We're gonna do metrics. I'm gonna comment that out for now. Oops. Just a minute here. Come on, here we go. So let's see like a little bit of tracing. And let me start that. So we're gonna see something happening, right? And it's gonna come up here like with the swagger. Okay, cool. All right, so we have like the swagger, like, and we have just the person, right? We're gonna have like here like Peter Parker. How old is he? Like put like his on his. Oops, I don't have the unlock. Okay, 20s. Okay, let's put him at email.com, whatever address. Okay, Fifth Avenue, something like that. And let's execute that. One thing before I do that, let me, where's the screen? Here. All right, so we had Aspire. Let me retry reloading that. Okay, this is bringing some content that was previously available. Anyways, has it reloaded? It has started. What about Jaeger? It isn't here. Not sure why it's complaining about this one. Okay, let me check this again. Maybe things were sleeping. Handle error. Anyways, let's see. That seems strange, but there was no error in here. There was an error here. Well, let's see what happens, really. But Jaeger seems to be up and running. We have a Rabbit's MQ. Let me refresh that to see. Okay, that seems to be there. I just want to check because, okay, seems to be there. Let me just run that and we can see it. Okay, so it's gonna be start like logging things. Well, we're only capturing traces, right? So we should capture like this sort of information here, person name, correlation ID. So we should send the message. Okay, it came like through the message and it's gonna kind of open the connection, grabbing the context, pushing to the injector, stamping some tags, pushing the message, and that's it, right? So that's the first part done. We got like a 200. If I come to, let's see, well, you can see a spike in here, right? So something, there was a message that went through. If I look at Jaeger, well, I can see that the API came up. And then you can see that those traces are coming, right? So you can see, okay, we have a Spinet core, we have like some telemetry, but the tags are here. So it's coming, this one is coming with this kind of auto instrumentation from ASP.NET Core, which is the component that comes with App Insights, if I'm Azure Monitor, right? Comes in here. But then we have further details. Remember, like the personal info, right? So that's in here. So we're stamping that. And the processing here contains, okay, that's the SP core, but the tags. It contains the correlation ID, right? And the person name. That's what those two information that we are capturing. Let me hide this thing here. And then we had the final message being pushed to the queue. Okay. And where like, okay, the person and the correlation ID. So things were flowing through. Is this still going to work? It seems it is. That's the one. Yeah. So it just came through. Same thing, right? So it's just like same behavior. We don't have like structured logs or metrics. I think that's why there's an error because we're not providing information. But traces are working, and that's what we expect, right? So that's coming through. Well, that's the first part only, right? So we need like what else? We need metrics. With metrics, we're going to have something very similar, right? When we get to the other part, to the worker service, I'm just going to copy what we have in here and put in there, right? So we're not going to do twice. So just to save time, let's go like in here with metrics, okay? So we need to push things across. For the metrics, we have something similar implementation in here that comes in here. The main difference is that we don't have a source because this is not a trace. Okay, so you don't need to specify that. But you have the resource builder. That's is important. So you need to identify which service is that. And with that, we can add meters. Okay, uh, those ones are well, you can have custom ones. You can have your own ones like from dotnet or from dotnet. They're like I'm gonna bring like few of them. I had it. Let me just bear with me. I was gonna type it. I'm not gonna type it. Let me replace that. Just looking at time. Okay, I bring like some sort of well, ESP.NET Core, the hosting, the Castro, which is a server, also the systemnet HTTP, which is part of the HTTP instrumentation. Okay, also going to use the exporter in here because now that we have the metrics, okay, that's enough for me just to show on Aspire because Aspire has the metrics, right? Jaeger doesn't have it, so I'm put like only to Aspire. The other thing, okay, I mentioned we have the pillars: logs, trace, and metrics. We cover trace, we cover metrics. What about logs? We need to include logs. It does with the Azure Monitor, right? It kind of covers us, okay? But if you want to see that on tooling, then you can hook that. There tooling that supports logs. There tooling that doesn't support, right? But if you were to do it, I'm not saying for application sites you don't need it, okay? But you could do that. Uh, I'm gonna put it this one because whoever jumps on this video later on, they're gonna see that they can do logs, okay? That's part of the specification, OpenTelemetry, but depending on the tooling, you don't have support for that. So that's something you can do it. And I'm using .NET, so builder logging is just separate, okay? Nothing to do with this directly OpenTelemetry. We're leveraging what's logging, and then we're hooking to that. I'm gonna bring the same service in here. Okay, let's put that one in. In general, I put like kind of in a visual way. It's a little bit better. It makes sense for developers to see. Okay, and okay, so like with only that, and then we need to add an exporter. Okay, for this exporter, we need to add this OpenTelemetry exporter. Let me copy like the same with Aspire. Aspire. Did I do it? No. Aspire support logs. Okay. I think like that's it's good because you could have like a single tool on your local to work with. It's still I feel like kind of a little bit buggy because maybe it's because it's preview, but it sounds like promising. Okay. Okay. So we have like the login there. So far so good. I'm gonna jump to the Orca service. All right. So that's what we need to have. We have covered tracings, metrics, logs. That's it. Now let's jump to the worker service. Worker service. What we have in here. So we have like the start of like this service that runs in a loop, basically. What it does, let's say in here, okay? So first, like it starts, creates like this channel, this connection factory with RabbitMQ, creates the connection. It listens to an event, which is going to be the message. As soon as it is received, it triggers this handler. It happens here like through a loop, okay? And what's important here is that as soon as this message is received, okay, it comes with this basic deliver event. This all like you can see that's part of the RabbitMQ arguments, but we're using like this propagator. And this propagator comes, it's a text map propagator. And this one, well, similar as the other. Let's see if I can jump in. So text propagator, that comes with this, the OpenTelemetry, okay? So just want to show that. Let me go back to this. But yeah, so it's just extracting what comes from these basic properties, and we have something here, another method, okay, that does the translation. So from the key, it takes like out of the value, right? And then from this value, it transforms into bytes that in the end transforms into a string. That's it. So it's basically grabbing the context, the baggage, right, from the activity context from the previous, or from the message itself that was pushed across, and then listens to that. And you can see here, like then we starting, okay, another activity name, that's this one is for the receive, and that's their consumer. Okay, we're just starting that, you're stamping some tags. Once that happens, we deserialize that, we're transforming the string onto this person envelope. And after we get that, we save to a repository, okay? If I look at the data itself, the repository, what it does, you can see that, well, I'm using the Dapper, okay? So it's just like to make things easier, just for the demo. So with the insert in here, it just simplify things. I'm not doing a transaction. In theory, we should. I'll leave it to you guys. But you can see that I am inserting a person and inserting an envelope. Right? Auditing, you could have like something like that. If you don't need it, good for you. Right? You don't need to implement a transaction. But that's like what you would be stamping or creating like as a record on your table. But we need to have telemetry for that. We don't have it. Right? So for us, like to be able to do that, I'm gonna copy what we had on the other one. There'll be a slight difference because this is a worker service, okay? In the worker service, we don't have ESP.NET Core anymore, right? But you can see that we have like the hosting, and that's it, right? The hosting does what we need. But then we need like, we can hook like instrumentations for like runtime, SQL, okay? And we have like these exporters using like Jaeger or OpenTelemetry. The app insights is this one, okay? It's a little bit different than the other one that was specific for ESP.NET Core. This is more generic, right? It's just a way to push telemetry onto uh, app insights. So, okay, let's go back to the programming here. We need to do something very similar, right? So this one, builder service is just services in here. And we need to add the open telemetry, which is exactly the same as before. Okay, one thing in here, okay, I'm gonna put like with tracing. Oops, what I did. Okay. With tracing. We're gonna do it with metrics. Okay, and we need in the end, well, we need to do like the logs as well, but the logs are not gonna be part of it. It's different. Okay, we have like, I'm creating like a logger factory. So because it's not hooked up to the services, I think like, let me see here. Dot. Well, I could use like the same. I think it's just a variation. Good points. Anyways, I'm gonna do like an. It could be like exactly the same in there. It could work. I'm just like in between. It's just a variation. Okay. I'm gonna show this log create logger factory dot create, and then for that I can have this sort of builder, and within this builder I can do add OpenTelemetry. In the end, it's just, you're gonna see that what I'm showing here, there'll be variations for that, just because there are different libraries and people trying to do the same thing. You're gonna see like all the implementations. Which one is the right one? I would say like if fits like the purpose that you're trying to do, like tracings, metrics, or logs, I think that's fine. And provided they have like support for like the community, that's good. But you're gonna see multiple implementations of that, or the same thing. Okay. So okay. So for that one, I'm gonna have in here, let's say logs, and then I'm gonna open up with logs. Let me go to the previous one, and I'm gonna do something very similar. Did I close? I did. Okay. Let me copy this. Exactly that. So we're gonna have the logs. In here we have host context, which is my builder. Okay. What's interesting here? I think this is it. No, this one. Oops, I changed the wrong place. Okay. Just sort this one. Otherwise the visual is not great. I have the OpenTelemetry, but I need to hook. Oh, it seems kind of intuitive. You're gonna see like ads, monitor, log, exporter. Okay, so this monitor log is going to do the work for me. Let me close other things in here for now. Not interested about it, only this. Okay, I need to have, where was the, here. I'm gonna need this guy. Endpoints, and this is going to be the host context. Okay, cool. So I need to hook like this Azure Monitor Log Exporter because it's for logs. We're gonna have one for metrics. You're gonna have another one for traces, which kind of it's intuitive. I think that one's pretty good. Tracing, at least like it shows like exactly metric. Like I'm gonna copy like now both of them. And where is that? This one, the tracing, we're gonna have this source. Let's see. Okay. I didn't put it. Control Z. Grab the whole thing. Tracing. Okay. Let me. We don't have the builder, and we have the host context. Let me just replace that. Place that. Okay. This one as well. In here, we will need to hook also that, as I said, the add Azure Monitor Trace exporter. That's it's easy then. Okay, let me copy that. Put in here. One of the things that we have in here, because we're dealing with SQL, okay? SQL instrumentation is not on this Azure Monitor, on this package by default. It is on the ASP.NET Core, but we don't have SQL in there. So we need to hook like any sort of instrumentation. That's why we had SQL in here. All right, so we need to add SQL client instrumentation. Cool. I'm gonna see, okay, options. We need to stamp the value, options dot set statement for text equals true. What I want to do is just, okay, to stamp the command. Once the command gets in, I just stamping what's in there, okay? And then that's it. I think now we can jump into metrics. Let's copy this whole thing in here. Copy that. Let's put it in here. Let's copy the host context. All right, same in here. And then for the metrics, okay, metrics. That's fine. Let just ident this one. Cool. For this one, guess what? So we have add Azure Monitor Metric Exporter. Let me copy this thing. Okay, and put in there host context. Okay, I think like from here we are good to go. Actually, this one we're not gonna have ASP.NET Core. We're gonna have another instrumentation. That's why we have the runtime instrumentation. Right? Yeah, that was it. So we kind of covered tracing, metrics, and logs. Let's run like this application now. That should work. And we should be able to see like end-to-end messaging. In the meantime, let me just see any comments. Oops, just like the trace coming here. What's your, okay, good question. Let me just bring from Jevan. What's your opinion about reducing boilerplate code, moving tracing codes out of the business logic as much as possible to declutter? Yes, maybe with interceptors, decorators, middleware, and filters. Yeah, everything that's in there, right? In general, like when you're doing service collections, you can create like extensions And through like those extensions, you could have specifics. So that means like, yeah, you're doing this boilerplate separately, right? So it just becomes, this is the sort of thing that you do it like once in a project, right? You're not gonna be doing this every single time. You just want like to reuse as much as you can. I agree. My preference is to use extension methods, and then as part of a separate service collection. You could create like a NuGet package. It just depends like how, if you want to create like a component out of that, you can. Uh, it just feels that if you're doing very often, it makes sense to do it. It's just like for a few projects. Well, having like that one separately on an extension, I think like makes sense. Let's do like the final testing here. Okay, and then we're gonna jump in and check application sites. Okay, I like coding, so always good sessions with coding. And then we're checking tooling. So let's pull it here, Marcel. Well, I'm on my 20s. Yeah. Let's put in here my street, and let's execute that. It's interesting that you're gonna see in here. Okay, the worker has started because I triggered that, and it kind of brought up like the Swagger and the worker service. So you can see that it has started. Okay, like it's tagging this queue, and that's it. And let me just execute that. Yeah, I know like we're extending a little bit. In general, like that's what happens like on coding sessions. It's difficult to kind of constrain that like to 1 hour. Sorry like for the extension, but yeah, thanks. I'm aware like that of that. Just hang with me. I'm gonna share like the source code later on, so probably you guys gonna be interested in checking the source. And like the first part, the API, right? Let's pass this across. You're sending the message. Now we're receiving the message, okay? We're receiving the message, and that's being already kind of stamped from like the context onto the current baggage, okay? Line 66 in here. So, and we're stamping those tags, and then this is serializing from a string to an object. Okay, so we have the envelope in here. The envelope is there, and then we're gonna get and save the information. Look at that. Cool, like all the steps were done. We got that the message was successfully saved. Let's see the tooling, right? From code perspective, we are done in here, right? The code is there. Let's see the tooling. Aspire. Let me bring that up. Metrics. Oops, what about this? Come on, do I need to load up? Come on, it would be very nice to see it. Last 5 minutes, last 30 minutes. Maybe there's something really not working here. Let me see if that reloads. There are things in here like Aspire, yeah, it's gonna come up like great. There's just like some sort of, yeah, issues. Maybe if I stop like the container and relaunch, that's gonna work. But anyways, I'm gonna come back to this one later if you have the time. But now you can see that we have the worker in here as well. Okay. If I find that, well, you can see that things have changed. This is only traces, okay? But you can see that now I have like the person that has been received, and even the details of the SQL in here as well. So I could capture that. And that's on Jaeger. What about on Azure? All right, we talk about it. Now I think that's the time like to showcase what happens. Uh, let's see here, application map. Last hour. All right, so that's being us doing this. What is interesting is that it created a map for me of, as I started with the API, what about this? This would be like kind of a Swagger interface, because that's a script tag, would be UI related, but it mapped even that. But the main request comes in here where like the message is being pushed. So there were like 2 calls to RabbitMQ. It got in here. Right? We can see that there was like a queue person receive. The message was sent in here. I forgot to show, but there was a queue in here, right? So the queue person was created. And the message has been long, the timeline, but there was a message sent. That's why we can see the queue. And then it pushed to the SQL, right? And it shows here like the duration. So you have like a visual representation of that. Okay, you could see like even go like to this level of detail that you could like even further explore. So that's the visual that you get like on App Insights. You have also metrics. Okay, and what's interesting is that it allows you to have, well, application insights in standards or log-based metrics. Okay, so you could have your metrics coming in here, right? So like active requests. Uh, I'm not gonna try to decipher those, but like I think average wouldn't be average, it would be count. Yeah, there are like some spikes in here, the number of active requests, and like so you can see like those graphs in here being represented and showed. If I put it, well, last hour only, it shows that, right? You have like more powerful charts that you can export. I think that's pretty good to explore. But you also have the telemetry, right? So with the traces, last hour. So if you look in here at the transaction search, we can see like the different sort of events that happen: trace, requests, dependencies. We didn't have exceptions, right? But it could happen. If I click on any of those in here, so you can see that I have the full view. But what's nice is this, right? So you have the timeline. So the same implementation that's available on every single tool, you have like the same sort of nesting, right? Or with those different events happening. Since like when we launched the Swagger, okay, because that's coming like from in here, like, and remember this role name, role instance. That's why it's important. Okay, it's important for you to have like this definition, because if you want to do any queries, which you can do, like from log analytics, here I'm showing like the visual, but you could just query and put like a custom query, right? Custom query, just like KQL. You could do that and just say, I want like only the traces for the role name, person, API, RabbitMQ. And in here, like the personal info that's being shown with the custom properties, which are the tags. Okay. It's coming also with like the details of the messages or any stamps, the message itself, the conventions, right? Semantic conventions. Coming here like with the details that's received onto the by the logs, sorry, by the queue. So we have that, and that's stamped in here, and then saving that information, right, onto the SQL. So, well, kind of covered like end to end. Uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna share like in here like the repository. This is the repository. I'm gonna put like on the chat. I'm just bringing that one up. So you can see that one. It's not in there yet. I'm going to push it without any hard-coded references to resources. But you could see that, yeah, this one, it's Aspire is promising. If we had like more time, we could just show. But as soon as you get like the metrics running, you have like the visuals for that. It could be like only a matter for me to restart the Docker and then get back to it. But for sure, it works really well. But it's still preview. Okay, so for your development purpose, I think that's fine. I think like with that, yeah, thanks for extending a little bit. I know that we went a little bit further than that. One of the things I would like to share is that, well, we have like the references in here as well. Everything here, like I didn't come up with like by myself. I have tweaked a lot just to come up like with this example, but I used all of those references, okay, just to get something that's custom and specific to this session. And with that, I also would like to, uh, well, invite whoever jumps in to this to the session, right? Is that Global Azure is happening. It's happening like the next month. We have like the call for speakers. We're having a session on Saturday on April 20th. So that's the link in there. I would advise if you have a content to share about Azure. We're having sessions of 20 minutes. All right, so it's good timing to bring like some introduction and some code example. If you're like if you are an infra guy or you do like DevOps, I think like 20 minutes is just time that's gonna fly. I would just like strongly uh, ask for you just to submit a session, and then we can just have like this gathering of like multiple professionals in the market to talk about Azure, right? So that's happening on April 20th. And well, with that, I'd like to thank you just to being with me like for a little bit late. And we're gonna have like next session happening next Monday. It's April Fool, but I'm not fooling you. It's just we're having like for sure a session that's happening like next Monday. Just keep in touch. Just check like the meetups. We have like more sessions coming. And yeah, thank you for joining and for the feedback. Really appreciate that. And catch you up like next time. Cheers.